we go. Hey there, everybody. So whenever you're watching this, just know that we are in a pandemic. we are experiencing a crisis, and we're having our own little technology crisis today. So I am demonstrating resilience, remarkable resilience, by pivoting, and also my guests are all pivoting, and we're all just coming together, and we're still creating this valuable training for you. So that's what we're doing. So I'm Coach Judy with Judy Prokopiak Coaching. And today I have this awesome friend of mine, Hazel Leigh McCrae. And she's going to tell you all about herself in a minute. But this whole series that we're doing is all about creating remarkable resistance. And I said like a recipe for remarkable resilience, because, you know, it's like when you go to cook a recipe, right? You have to have ingredients, and then you have pots and pans and tools, and then you have your skill set, right? That you've had to practice cooking, right? So I'm not a great baker because that requires a lot of, measuring and all the things. But I can, like, I'll just take 20 things out of my fridge and throw them together, and I can make something. So, so I've developed some skill sets around that, right? But then also I would take a recipe, and maybe I don't like mushrooms, and maybe I don't eat gluten and dairy. So I'm going to make something different. I'm going to leave those out. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that, we're in this crisis. The whole world is going through it. Everybody's experiencing it a little bit different. Everybody has a different history, a different story, different traumas, different things. And currently some people are out of work, some people's businesses are closed, some people, are working overtime, like nurses and doctors, right? So everybody's sort of experiencing this differently. But what we want to do is we want to really talk about creating resilience ahead of time so that you have some tools. And then guess what? We're just in a crisis right now. So why not learn some things that you can learn and that you can start implementing? And not everything's going to work for you. We've talked about yoga and mindfulness and strength training and nutrition and lead yourself first. Like, these are the things that we've talked about today. And it's kind of like trying on pants. You're like, I don't know. Do I like how these pants fit? Like, I don't know. Do I like them? Maybe not, right? And then, like, so you could try and implement some of these things. And so, you're the expert on you, and Hazel is going to talk about this nervous system piece, which is so valuable because you'll be able to tap in and tune in and look at how these tools that, you're probably getting, like me, right? 10 emails a day that are like the 15 ways to survive COVID, and the 3 things you need to do for self-care, and the 49 things that you should do to, like, deal with stress. And you're just like, you're more overwhelmed, or you're trying them and you're like, that didn't work. That did not help me, And so, just be compassionate on yourself, and just know that, like, however you're doing this, however you're showing up, however you're figuring it out, it's all okay. As long as, like, but if you need help and you need support, that's what we're here for. You can reach out, and, so that's just what I kind of have to say. And just also know that, like, we're going to do a little recap of show notes. Who knows, we might just decide to do this again sometime when we figure it out. But we're going to do a little recap of show notes, so you can message me, private message me, or anybody on the call, on the trainings. But you can private message me that you want the show notes, or you can go to my Facebook group, which is the Self-Leadership School, and I will be posting them in there as well. So that's what I got for you. So let's get to it. All right, my good friend, Hazel Leigh McCrae. She sometimes goes by Hazel, sometimes Lee, so who knows what I'll call her, except amazing.
Oh, thank you, that's very sweet.
And she wrote a book called Anxiety is Awesome. Mm-hmm. So that is how awesome she is. So we need to listen to what she has to say today. So anyway, thanks for showing up, and I'm gonna let you just tell a little bit about yourself, and then share whatever wisdom you want to share with us.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm a mental health therapist, a licensed professional counselor in Texas. I've been in the field licensed for 25 years, but in the field itself 30 years. So I've seen a lot of things come and go, and I've seen a lot of trends come and go, and I've seen a lot of shifts in understanding in my career as far as what goes on with our mental health. And I really love that you're doing this training and highlighting different, or this webinar and doing different aspects, because it really kind of is a holistic approach. And that's what we're looking at more and more in mental health is we can't compartmentalize a person into, oh, this is just emotional issues, this is just physical issues, or biological issues. It really is we're a very complex human being that we need to incorporate lots of different techniques for overall health. And so I really appreciate you highlighting different aspects of it. I have in my career focused with anxiety, depression, and trauma. And part of that, the reason I kind of lean towards those is because I've actually been dealing with anxiety most of my adult life. And I didn't know I was anxious until I had a panic attack. And it was one of those things. I was at work. I was about to lead a process group with some children that I was working with, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I couldn't get a deep breath. I couldn't catch my breath. I felt a heaviness in my chest. My hands were tingling. My arm was tingling. And I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And that was just, I felt it came out of the blue because of my understanding of what anxiety was. And so that led to a very long struggle with anxiety until I started to understand the neurobiology of what was going on. And when I started to understand the neurobiology, it shifted what I understood it to be, and it shifted my relationship with it. And I no longer see it as something I have to struggle with as much as it's a friend telling me stuff is going on in me. And so that's kind of when I work with clients, I really attempt to help them see the anxiety differently. And it's the neurobiology that was the component that was like, that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. I would not have identified as anxious either my whole life until, oh my gosh, I was like 50, but I had a lot of anxious type behaviors, right? But I just thought it was like, I'm just a human doing, I'm just gonna go and do, and I'm busy, and I'm just like right, all of this stuff, and then emotional eating, but I never equated. I was like, I'm not anxious, I don't have anxiety.
Yeah,
right?
I saw myself as high achiever and kind of type A personality. I'm gonna attack a problem and figure it out.
Yeah, right. But there's an underlying anxiety thing that's pushing you to that. So until I did some hypnotherapy, and she was a coach hypnotherapist, and she said, I think all of this perfectionism and procrastination and indecision and all that, she's like, I think that's anxiety. I think, and I was like I was floored. I was like, no, I just need to make some decisions, and I just need to stop procrastinating. And she was like, yeah, well, and then when I could make the awareness that like it was because of that's how my anxiety showed up for me. So not as a panic attack. I was like, I don't have panic attacks. But I can get up and talk in front of people. Like I don't have anxiety.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and I was the shy one that always was like, oh, I'll just be part of the crowd instead of the leader of the crowd or the spokesperson of the crowd. I'm just the shy one. No, I was anxious. I was anxious to be seen. I was anxious to be put out there. I was anxious to be judged.
Yeah. And look, and you know what I did? I did like the opposite. I was like, I'm going to go into leadership so that I don't get rejected, because I'm having a lot of fear and anxiety about abandonment and rejection. So I'll be the leader, and they can't reject me then because I'm the leader.
You're the leader.
But I didn't really want to be the leader. I wanted connection.
That's interesting. I hid for like, I'm here. But that's a great example of how anxiety manifests differently for every person. And it's a great example of how our nervous system and our brain has worked together to create a pattern that works for us.
Yeah, right? The survival pattern.
Yeah, it's a survival pattern. You had to be seen and in control, whereas I needed to hide and have no control.
Right. Which also gave me anxiety to be seen and in control, because I was like, I am not a leader, because I had so much self-doubt and like, right? So I just created I still created anxiety for myself.
As did I, because I was never seen and I never felt the connections or the importance that I was seeking.
I mean, we could just talk about this. It'll be good to go. I'm sure somebody's resident, and then there's all the people in between that were like, okay, anyway, this is awesome. Anxiety is awesome.
It is. It is. When you can kind of identify what's been your programs that have gotten you to the point where you are, it's really an interesting path and journey to see. And if you can look at that and not beat yourself up and just notice how resilient you are as a being, it's really a beautiful story that everyone has and how they got to where they are. And how resilient the body is to get you through stressful situations. So in discussing things today, I want to kind of identify or define a couple of concepts. First of all, anxiety for me is basically the fight or flight system that has been turned on and it doesn't know when to turn off. So it's been turned on kind of in the background and has been running for a while. And when it's been on long enough, you're not going to be able to ignore the physical sensations of it. Because when the fight or flight systems turn on, you have the adrenaline dumped into your system, you have the cortisol dumped into your system, your muscles are tighter, your blood pressure goes up, your breathing goes to the top of the chest instead of down into the lower part of the lungs. So you have higher blood pressure, you have tenser muscles, you aren't breathing and oxygenating your body well. All these things will get you feeling really keyed up when it's been on in the background for a while. And so that's the type of anxiety that I think so many people experience that become problematic, is it gets triggered and your body doesn't know when to turn off. Yeah. And that is where you have the panic attacks or the anxiety attacks, or you just start to feel like you're a nervous wreck all the time. Yeah. So that's kind of,
you start having those physical symptoms of mine was starting to manifest in a lot of physical ailments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's true, because when all those things are turned on, your digestive tract turns off. Because your body's prepared to flee or to fight, and it doesn't want to give energy for digestion because it's not necessary at that moment to survive. And the fight or flight system is there to keep us safe. And if you realize the only reason the amygdala, which is part of the brain, is there is to identify if a situation or sensations that are coming in are dangerous or not. And if it's not dangerous, great. It allows the sensation to be brought to another part of the brain. If it doesn't know if it's dangerous or not, it's going to assume it's dangerous, and it's going to turn on the fight or flight. So basically, the fight or flight or the amygdala in the body is primed to keep us safe. That's the primary thing the brain is there for. The amygdala is there is to keep us safe. And pretty much any information that's coming in through the body goes through the amygdala first to say, hey, what do we need to do with this information? But it also works top down. If we have a thought, it also goes to the amygdala to see if there's fear behind that thought, in which case then it turns on the fight or flight. So it's working two ways. It's called top up or bottom up, or top down,
bottom up.
Yeah. So the bottom up is your sensations coming in from your body, going up the nervous system, hitting the amygdala. That makes the decision whether it's safe or not. and it turns on the fight or flight if you're not safe.
Yeah.
It sometimes then will send the signal up to your thinking brain so you can have a thought about the situation, but it's already taken action. So it's already turned on your fight or flight system and prepared your body. You can also do the top down where you have a thought that is fear based, and that triggers the fight or flight system too.
Yeah.
But about 80% of the information going through our brain is coming from our body up to the brain, not from the brain down. And I think that's where, for me, as I was saying, I've been in the career and I've seen my career so long and I've seen things shift. And when I came into therapy, we did a lot of cognitive behavioral work that said, okay, you do X, Y, and Z and it should work. And it was all the top down. It's like, change your thinking, you'll change your reality, which is true if it's coming up from your thoughts down. Right. But if it's coming from your body up, that doesn't work necessarily.
Yeah. It's like extra steps. When it comes from your body up and you're already triggered and you're already emotional and then you're having then you're having thoughts about it. Then you have to go do something about the thoughts, but then you also have to do something about the body. Right? It's like there's extra steps if you're not really tapping your body. And I just wanted to add one thing. I heard something not too long ago about the amygdala, and like for women, the amygdala is significantly larger than in men. And it's well, yeah, it can be. I guess compared to how it used to be, I guess, in the caveman times or whatever. But it tends to be women's are bigger usually because they feel like we had more information. We had to start processing. Those are poisonous berries, and those are that, and that was that, and so we had to keep everybody alive, and we had to pass that information down, and so we had to store more things. And when you talked about that everything's going through the amygdala, totally makes sense when you have all that data kind of in there as a filter, right? That we're like, now we have depending on what's happened in your life and all of this stuff too. So kind of interesting. I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but I just kind of.
No, in fact, that brings up a good point. Again, I said the neurobiology was kind of like an aha moment in my understanding of anxiety. Part of what came out, I think this is in Dan Siegel's work, was how the nervous system is primed prior to our birth. That we have the mirror neurons in our bodies that mirror what our mother is experiencing, or like a father or some other figure that's there, that our mirror neurons actually start to fire and mirror what they're experiencing.
Right.
So if a mother is going through a stressful time during the pregnancy, the baby is already being wired to mirror that in the mother. And what's also kind of cool is that they have done research on, for example, the Holocaust survivors and their children and grandchildren, and the changes in the neurobiology of trauma survivors, major trauma survivors, have been passed down 2 and 3 generations.
Yeah, kind of in the DNA, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the way they're wired. They're wired differently than someone who has a lineage that has no trauma in the background or no major trauma in the background.
Yeah. And I always feel like, I didn't know this for a long time, but my mom had a lot of, her parents were in orphanages, and so they didn't have any parenting skills. And then they were both alcoholics. And anyways, so she had a lot of unworthiness and things, but she was pregnant when she was unmarried. But I always felt like I was just bathed in these unworthiness emotions, right? That like, I'm not good enough, I'm not something enough, because I never really understood, like, I felt like she loved me and it was great. And like, and I had my own story, but there was like this innate sense of just unworthiness. And I didn't know where that came from until I started looking at things like this and this, DNA and this kind of thing, and this at a cellular level. And it totally made a lot more sense to me that why I just felt like that just a piece, this part of me that was just unworthy for, no, like, it was really weird, but it was, then I was able to kind of move through that. But not that that's either here nor there, but it kind of speaks to what you're talking about.
Yeah, that we may be primed for certain responses without anything that we've experienced.
Right.
And that's really kind of weird when you look at it like, okay, I'm an adult that has anxiety and I can look back. I've been able to identify some of my triggers and stuff. But yeah, my parents both grew up in the Depression. And my mother's family was really pretty poor and they really struggled. And still to this day, I never feel comfortable financially. And I'm like, when I look at things realistically, it's like, really? I've been able to manage pretty good. So where is this fear? And then I'm like, it may be I'm just primed that way. And what I've kind of come to look at is when that gets triggered, it's like, okay, realistically, is this a fear or is this something that's just been triggered in me? And do I need to just kind of work through it and experience it and let it go?
Yeah. And that totally like loops into what we're talking about here, is that how are some people really a little more resilient, like, or they're expressing more resiliency, or they're able to show more resiliency, or they're able to, and the post-traumatic growth kind of path, or the post-traumatic stress response, where little PTSD or whatever we want to call it, right, where it's like we're more functional, less functional, somewhere along the line. And it's many things, as we could like, we do not have all the answers, but when you're talking about that piece, right, it's like bringing that in to what we're going through now.
Yeah, and as I was saying before, it's the whole body that needs to be looked at, because the anxiety response or stress response is a full body response. You have the brain involved, you have the nervous system involved, you have the biochemistry involved in the body is involved, the emotions are involved. So in dealing with any kind of stress response, whether it's anger, anxiety, whether it's depression, whether it is PTSD or PTS, post-traumatic growth, you really have to look at a full body response. And that's one of the things that in working with the clients, I don't do just cognitive behavioral. There has to be that body component to it. Because again, 80% of the sensations in our body that's triggering through the brain or thoughts is through the body. So you have to have the body involved. I want to backtrack to Dan Siegel's work a little bit. He talked about implicit memories and explicit memories. And implicit memories are those memories that are held in our body. And basically, the thinking brain doesn't come online until somewhere between 18 months and 24 months old. So prior to that, you have pretty much all your experiences are then being stored in your body. And starting about 18 months to 24 months, then the thinking brain comes on. So you're able to think through some stuff, but still there's a lot being stored in the body. And that was a key component for me understanding my anxiety, is like I kept monitoring my thoughts. I'm like, there's nothing here that's triggering. There wasn't a fear-based thought to trigger this anxiety, but there was something stored in my body that triggered it. And so that was part of my thing, is like, oh, I have to come to peace with the fact that my body has these memories and have stored all these memories that are triggering some of the anxiety responses, that my body has learned this means I'm in danger and turn on the fight or flight. So that was a key component for me to understand, is that I have a lot of stuff stored in my body that just natural development means it's going to be stored in the body.
Right. From when we're young, childhood, when we're those first few years,
right,
especially if there's some traumatic things in there.
Right.
Yeah. Or you interpret it as traumatic, or it was traumatic for a child to, to be without a parent or whatever.
Well, and you have to also remember trauma for a kid is very different than a trauma for an adult. So for example, my nephews were learning baseball or started to do baseball recently. And one of them was starting, I think he was 3.5 or so. It was the T-ball where the helmets were so heavy compared to their bodies. They were top heavy running. It looked kind of like the Weeble Wobble, the wobblehead people running around the bases. Yeah, exactly. But he was playing and he missed the ball. And of course they put the ball back on the tee and he missed it again. And the third time he hit it, but it just dribbled off the tee. And he didn't realize he was supposed to run until the coach was telling him to run, and the other kid grabbed it and outran him to the base. And he just melted. You could just tell he melted on the thing, on the field. Well, later that afternoon, his big brother teased him about that. And he just melted again. And that right there, and I kind of intervened and told the big brother, hey, you really need to be a big brother and encourage him and not tease him. Yeah. But that right there is a trauma for a young kid.
Yeah.
It's the planting the seed that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
And those are kind of the things that when you look back at a person's past, these may be little things, but they plant big seeds that grow into big things that then continue to get added to as you go through life.
Right. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not something enough. No one wanted me. My mom forgot to pick me up from swim practice.
Exactly.
Like I must not be worthy because she didn't remember. How could she not come and get me?
Right. And our brain is an association making machine. So when you have one thing in there that says, I'm not good enough because I'm not good at baseball or t-ball, and then something else happens that says I'm not good enough, and something else says I'm not good enough, pretty soon that is a pretty ingrained thought that you're not good enough.
Right. Pretty much your belief system then.
Right. It becomes your belief system that you're going to continue to play out. What is weird is, though, that starts pre-verbal. In the pre-verbal implicit memories, that starts there. And it starts as a sensation in the body. And so when you are an adult and you're having an anxiety attack and you're like, what's going on? It's really important to tune into your body and do some of that somatic work. Like, where do I feel that? What does that feel like? And to be able to be with it and experience it and put thoughts to it.
Yeah, we talked about it in the yoga episode about naming, because one of the yoga teachers is a clinical psychologist. So she was also talking about, this naming the feeling, which is not what you're talking about, right? These feelings come, and at least we can put a name to it, or where am I feeling it in my body, or what else, right? So what else tool tips do you have around that, about navigating the body of that?
Deep breathing, and I'm sure the yoga instructor really talked about the deep breathing too, because as the sensations come up and we've triggered the fight or flight system, we're going to go down that fight or flight path unless we can shut that down. And the deep breathing, getting the big belly breath is really important to be able to start to shut that down. Because again, when we're anxious, we breathe at the top of our lungs. But if we breathe at the bottom of our lungs where our belly goes out, we're actually telling our body, hey, we can relax, we can breathe like we're supposed to. And you can turn off that response. So breathing is a big one. Sitting with the feeling, identifying it, identifying the sensation, not being afraid of it, just be with it. And if you're with it 30 seconds, usually it's enough to really diminish what you're experiencing. And if you can get some words that goes with that and get it a little more cognitive, then you have something you can work with.
I love it's like not being in resistance with the emotion. Like, right, just experiencing it. I think so many times, I can speak for myself and a lot of my clients, but it's like, oh, I don't want to feel that negative emotion because it feels bad. or like up until I learned differently. But
Right.
you know, I don't want to feel sad or mad or bad or whatever. And of course, I had a mom that told me don't do that, so I'm not gonna do that anyway. But then it feels like it doesn't feel good, and so then you're like resisting it. But when you can just allow the emotion and then just like know that, oh, it's only about a minute and a half anyway, it's just a wave, it's just like the feeling that will come, and then you might have thoughts about it, and that might trigger more and more emotion. But
Yeah, but if you can identify a thought with it, that
mhm.
may be one of those triggers that then you can think, oh, is that part of what's going on with this? And can I start to shift that thought?
Yeah,
So I'm not any good at sports could actually be, I was decent at sports. I was just embarrassed.
yeah,
No, when I really think about it, I'm actually pretty good at sports. I am pretty athletic. And so you can start to shift the thinking into what is more realistic, or how you would choose to look at it. Um,
yeah,
so it can come from the body, the wisdom can come from the body. And being with the body can give you a lot of insight that then you can shift using the higher brain that wasn't
yeah.
engaged when this message was put in.
Yeah, it's interesting because even like I said, it's all connected, which is really why I wanted to have this holistic platform.
Mhm.
Because even in the yoga and the personal trainer who talked about strength, strength training to help you feel confident and empowered, right? But even in the yoga, she talked about, dropping into your body and mindfulness, dropping it, right? Because we're so in here, or we're just avoiding what's going on here because we don't know what to do with all this emotion coming up from our body, like you were talking about.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, what is all this anxiety? What is this? Like,
Mhm.
why do I have this?
Yeah, and most of the time when I am working with a person who has anxiety issues and or depression for that matter, we wind up going back to childhood messaging that they got instilled at a young age. And when I was first coming into the field, we thought the brain was fully developed and kind of concrete at 25-ish or so. And I had heard at that point that like 50% of our patterns and beliefs were established by age 4, and then another 30 or so by age 8, and another 15 by age 18. So you only had 5 or 10% of your brain that you were developing as an adult. Otherwise, your patterns and stuff were established. And I do think that is accurate, except that now we know that the brain is plastic, neuroplastic. So we can have those beliefs wired in and we can shift them.
Yeah,
And so going back and looking at the 50% that was instilled by the time we were 4 years old or so, we're still playing that out if we have not done any work in shifting that. So we have a lot of faulty wiring, so to speak, that's going on, that's triggering the anxiety or triggering depression or triggering a stronger traumatic response than someone else. It's because of our previous wiring. And if we can just be at peace with that and say, okay, it's there, let me understand it. Let it guide me or give me information in different situations, then it's no longer something to be afraid of. It's
right.
something to give you a lot of information.
Yeah, it's just so fascinating. It's so fascinating. I know that that's what two of my pillars are: rewire your mind and reframe your past, because it's like, the meaning we're giving stuff from the past. And like you just talked about rewiring, holy cow, when I started doing that, it was like, like, what the heck is going on in there? And it's funny you talk about a 4-year-old, like most of it's instilled. And I remember doing the hypnotherapy with this counselor person, and I was like, I was a 4-year-old feeling unworthy and all of these things, right? And it was like in my mind, I was like, what? A 4-year-old is running my emotional life, and I'm like 50 at the time, you know? And like there were parts of my life that were being run by that emotion from
Mhm.
this 4-year-old. So yeah, and then to rewire it, oh my gosh, I thought I was having like a multiple personality disorder. I was like, oh wait, the new Judy, the old Judy, the new Judy, the old, wait, who am I going to be on the other side of it? I don't know. Like some moments I'd be like, no, I want to be over here. And then my ego wasn't letting go and all of my patterns were holding on. And I was like, the new Judy, no. Like,
it's funny you say that. Yes, it feels that way sometimes. And even now, I'll be triggered and I realize I'm triggered. I'm like, oh, okay, that's the 20-year-old that's
yeah.
triggered right now. I'm like, what do I need to do for the 20-year-old? Which is a really cool skill to have.
I love that. Yeah.
But it does kind of like feel a little like multiple personality thing going on.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah. So yeah, and there's two ages that still today get triggered right and left in me. And I'm just like, okay, I hear you. Just I've got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so great.
And yeah, it's been going back and identifying, okay, this age part of me is holding this. And I have to go and soothe that part of me for a second or let her know I'm in control. I got it.
Yeah. Thank you for showing up.
Yeah.
Thank you for showing up. Thank you for the information.
Yeah.
Like, right. Yes, I'm feeling triggered. I'm noticing what I'm noticing. Like, right. Yeah. Having a conversation. Yeah. So it's awesome. This is awesome. We're going to have to close it up, even though I want to talk to you for like 4 more hours. We'll have to do another, extended version of some of this. Now that I mean, it has been fascinating for me to sit and listen and be part of all of this. Like, it's really, reinforcing some of the things that I know, but then also like, learning new things and how are you dealing with, some of this stuff. So, so tell us a little bit about how people can find you and how they can learn from you or whatever. Get some of your wisdom.
Okay, the easiest way, 2 ways. My website is healingpathwayscounseling.com, and they can connect on there and connect with me that way. My email is healingwithhazel@gmail.com. And June 3rd, I believe, is the date. The first Wednesday in June, I'll be doing a 3-hour webinar on anxiety and kind of going through the neurobiology of it, and then some skills that you can use to manage the anxiety. So that is something that I will be offering free because I know a lot of people, especially with the pandemic, triggering fear anyway, a lot of people who tend towards anxiety are really living in a state of anxiety. And so I've offered this a couple times already, and the next one will be that first Wednesday in June.
That's so great. It's so powerful. The tools or whatever. And you have is your book on Amazon?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Anxiety is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love it. Thanks so much for showing up today and being flexible with your flexible nervous system. Was there anything else you wanted to say right now, or you're good?
No, I'm good. I haven't really talked much about the importance of nutrition in dealing with anxiety, but I have a feeling you have someone coming on that's going to be talking. So that's perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. She got booted out this morning when we spent the first 30 minutes in chaos. But yeah. But she's so gracious, and she's coming back on right now. And she has a 3-year-old. She has a little one, so she was probably really interested in what you had to say there. Anyway, thank you, Hazel Leigh. You are awesome.
Thank you.
Anxiety or not. No, thank you for your wisdom, and thanks for giving up part of your Saturday and just joining us. And I just know that it's going to be out there. And now, yeah, we can share more about your. I'll share more on my page about your upcoming webinar. And
that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and it'll all be great, and we'll be staying connected. I like you in the purple today too.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, no, it's like for some reason it's pulling out like the purple in the back, whatever. So
yeah.
Right. Awesome. I'm gonna start recording now. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.